You good?
Yeah, wait.
All right. Welcome to Buyer's Remorse. I'm Darren.
I'm Justin.
And we're here to play the unloved games that are in our Steam library that are probably unloved for a good reason.
Well, we kind of make each other play.
So Justin picked one for me last week, and it was, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Last time, Justin picked one for me last time, and it was interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
I picked one for him that wasn't as mean as my last one, and that was called
The Ball.
Buyer's Remorse with Darren and Justin.
So I know this game. I played it a long time ago, but like a demo of it. So I had no idea. I knew it was pretty interesting, but
this game came out in 2010.
Right.
And at the moment, it's roughly $10 on Steam, but I think I bought it for about $2.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a bit old, but it's not that bad as far as looks. I mean, it's 2010, but clearly they had some money behind it. When I was looking up the game, I bought it before I saw that it said partial controller. Whenever it says partial controller, that's always a bit worrying for me.
I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
It means a wide range of things, from one button works to it might work if you have some sort of application or software to program it in, to no, it actually does work for the most part. But there's maybe something that doesn't quite work. So, for example, this game, I was pleasantly surprised. The controller pretty much worked.
Okay.
I think the only thing that I couldn't really get it to do, and maybe I just didn't find the right button for it, there is a kind of hint button. So you can hit H on the keyboard for help or hint, and something will pop up. I didn't find a button for that on the controller. So maybe I missed out on that. But otherwise, yeah, that's what it is. So I was pretty happy with the partial controller, where actually the controller could do most everything. There was a kind of slight awkwardness to it at times, but it did work. So I was quite happy with that. As I loaded up the game, there was either campaign or survival. I chose campaign.
Of course, yeah.
I looked for subtitles, couldn't find them, but that's because the game is default set to have them, I believe.
Okay.
So, you played
I played like a demo of it, way back. I know a little bit about it. Like, when I described it to you, I don't know if I described it completely wrong, but in my memory, it was like almost like a first-person shooter, except you're a ball, and you gotta, like, kill weird Aztec guardians or something like that. Was I accurate? No.
Sort of. I mean, you're close. So let's talk about how this game starts. So it starts with, you start by looking at the level, and then there's a description of the level, which it really doesn't need, because then the cutscene basically tells you exactly the same thing. So as I jump into the game, it puts me, well, it doesn't put me. There's a cutscene of an dig going on top of a mountain, and my character falls in, and the crane or winch, whatever they lowered me down on, is broken, which is why I fell. And they say, well, it's my friend, apparently, according to the description. My friend says they have to fly in a piece to fix it, but I may as well wander around and explore. Which is not, I think, probably the best idea, to wander around a cave where you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, honestly, I think waiting near the place where you're going to be saved would probably be the smart thing, but that would also be the most boring game ever.
Yeah.
That will be another episode of Buyer's Remorse in the future. But the cutscene basically says it's Mexico, 1940, and I don't know, the game happens pretty quickly. So I start walking, and very quickly I end up with a gun that is kind of a mix between that kind of era of like Aztec, Maya kind of thing, and like steampunk. Mm. So it's kind of like a steampunk skull gun, and it does two things. It has a hammer, and it has what I'm just going to refer to as a magnet. It calls the ball to you.
That's right. I remember it now. Yeah.
So you get that, but you don't get the ball at first. You have to learn how to use the hammer side first. So you go up to this kind of wall, and there's a hammer symbol on it. You hit it with a hammer, which took me a couple tries to figure out. because it basically starts up when you hold the button down and you have to release it in order to hit.
Okay.
So instead of pressing to hit, you're pressing to charge up and then releasing the pressure to hit. So that took me a couple tries because I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. But once I got it, I hit that wall became stairs. So now I walk up the stairs and I get the ball. And the first puzzle I put in quotes, there's basically 2 blocks and I just have to use the ball to hit these 2 blocks or kind of pressure plates. And then I go up some stairs, I walk across a board that was created from those, and then I hit a button. And this button, I find this button to be very amusing because, again, they tried to have it be this kind of style, right? That kind of ancient style. But the way they've made the character look, it's a little man, but he's got his arms in the air, which makes him look like he's just shrugging, going, I don't know. Like, I don't know what this button does. Good luck. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. So hit the button, that opens another door, and then words pop up on the screen. This is an autosave. This is what it looks like. You've hit a checkpoint. When you hit the checkpoints, you also go back to full health, which is nice.
That's nice, yeah.
You don't have to wait to die in order to start again and have the full health. So that is nice, though for a long point in my playthrough, there was nothing to hurt me, so it didn't really matter. Or insta-kill. So again, it didn't really matter, but we're not quite there yet. The ball is just this massive giant ball that has 2 tones to it. So I guess they're trying to say that it's made of like 2 metals. It also has some light panels on it. It's honestly a bit over the top considering that they could have just said it was a giant magnet and that's what I was using. But I think they're trying to say that this is some sort of magical technology, and that's why I can call the ball from so far away. I don't know. Try not to overthink this one too much. It's a game called The Ball.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a point where the character in the text says, I found a device I can only refer to as ball. I'm like, yeah, that's really thinking it through. So I don't know how this ever got through marketing.
This guy's supposed to be an archaeologist, yeah? He's like, yeah, we'll just call it ball.
Yeah. Not giant ball, not
ancient Mayan relic ball.
No, just ball.
Ball.
So that does feel a little weird to me. Again, if this is an archaeologist, we have the same problem as Indiana Jones or Lara Croft or anyone else who decides to run around and destroy things before actually recording, which is, again, why we probably shouldn't be wandering around when our friend is waiting for us. But anyway, there's a cutscene where I guess we're led to believe that our character is reading the symbols on the wall. And it keeps talking about they help mankind, but then they're afraid of mankind, which makes me think that they must be aliens of some kind. But at this point in the game, at least, it's not really clear. There was a point where I was moving the ball around and a monkey screamed and was like running away from the ball. And I thought it was very funny, but we're going to come back to that later. Here's something I want to say about the ball. The ball does move very easily, though sometimes it does get stuck around corners. So you have to go back and get it. And sometimes it rolls too easily off of pressure plates.
Oh, so it's quite sensitive then, yeah. Or sensitive in the wrong places.
Yeah, or the ball, because it's a ball, it just keeps rolling. It adheres to
Is there not like a break button where you can like roll it and then just stop it?
Only if I'm bringing it to me and I'm having it right in front of me.
So you can't like roll it out and then like, okay, stop there.
No, that would have been
nice.
a plus. That would have been a huge, huge plus because otherwise there are some things that become very, very difficult, as will become apparent very quickly. I found this is how I found out that, because there was a pressure plate that would raise and lower kind of a platform, essentially. And so I was getting it to raise me up, but if I didn't move off of it quick enough, then the ball would roll off and then I'd be back down to where I started again. And this was also an issue because I found a secret.
Ooh.
So for secret hunters, this game does have secrets. It is a kind of golden statue, looks like a head. The nice thing about it, though, I would say, is that it gives you a little bit of text story and kind of background. So I do like that. A secret that's not just, here's a trophy to look at, which I'll never really look at, but actually adding to the story would be something nice. I only found this one, though. I think some of the others were too hard for me to want to really attempt. That first one was really, really easy.
Right.
There is an issue in this game of jumping and platforming that doesn't quite work for me, and maybe why this game isn't as well known as it could be. Because it's an interesting concept. I control a giant ball, and that, at least in the first hour, that's pretty much the only power that I know of. And that is very unique. And it does have some puzzle work, which is kind of nice. Not overly complicated from what I found so far, but that kind of easy, quick puzzle that challenges you but doesn't over-challenge you. You won't often rage quit, I think, because of the puzzle. I think if people were to rage quit, it'd be more some of the mechanics and some of the level design. But
I mean, how does it look though? Is it a pretty game for?
It looks like it's 2010, but it looks like good 2010. They do reuse a lot of the same assets a lot. I don't mind that so much. It looks fairly good, honestly. But I'm much more lenient. I'm not really worried about graphics. I'm more worried about mechanics and does it work? And does it look okay? Yeah. I mean, you can tell what everything is. I think when we get to the creatures later, maybe they don't look as good as they could. But otherwise, no, it looks fairly good. I mean, the gun looks pretty cool, even though it's really weird. It does look pretty cool. On your screen, you have 2 gauges. You have a health gauge, which is basically just numbered, and you have another number, which is how far away you are from the ball. And I think there's also kind of a compass to tell you where you are in relation to the ball. I didn't really use that much, but perhaps later in the game I'll need that. That's how important the ball is. The ball is everything to you. It's all you've got, essentially. But this means that it's much like what I told you before when I was playing Batman Arkham Knight. I was a bit frustrated because in that game, Batman always needs the Batmobile, sometimes to a ridiculous degree where you have to get the Batmobile into really ridiculous situations or
in through the bedroom window.
It's very kind of over the top. I need my Batmobile all the time. This game is a bit like that. The game is constantly separating you from the ball so that you have to go back to get it. So there are things that you can just do on your own, whether pushing a button or hitting a cube or hitting another hammer spot to make sure that you can get the ball to come with you. But in this game, that doesn't feel so out of place. In a game called The Ball, I would expect I need to have the ball with me a lot.
Yeah, it's not called Batman Arkham Batmobile.
Yeah. Though that might be the next one.
Yeah.
So at times it's a bit frustrating because I just want to move forward. I don't want to have to leave the ball behind, run around, and then figure it out. It also at times feels a bit set up like the whole, I don't know if dungeon is the right word, but let's just say that if the whole dungeon is designed to get the ball from one place to another. And I know that it did mention at some point that the aliens were really afraid that we would get the power of the ball, but the ball isn't that powerful.
Not yet.
I don't know. In the first hour of play, it does not feel that powerful. You can get a rope to come out of the ball to attach to certain blocks so that you can move them around a bit awkwardly, but that's useful. You can use it to smash creatures. That's useful, but it's not that powerful. I mean, at the time of whenever this was supposed to take place, yeah, that probably seemed incredibly powerful, but all you need to do is set up a series of pits for it to fall in.
Or run up the stairs.
Yeah, possibly. It can go up ramps pretty well.
Okay.
So I don't know. It could, in theory, it should be able to go upstairs because the size of it, I mean, it's as tall as I am. It should be able to come upstairs. It would just be a bit more difficult. But I think it's just not that powerful. I'm just a bit shocked when it says how they were worried about us getting the power of the ball. When I'm going, the ball isn't that great.
So, I mean, basically what you're saying is, it sounds to me like the whole game is like, okay, so the aliens I don't know why they've dropped this technology off, but it sounds like they've set up a trial. Yeah. Like, it should be impossible to move the ball from point A to point Z, basically. And point Z is where you're going to maybe install this ball into its place to unleash the full potential. But they've made it as hard as possible to get from those 2 points. Is that kind of like what you think the story is like?
I have no idea. At this point, I mean, I played in my 60 minutes, so I have no idea.
I'm totally just...
You're filling in the gaps.
Guessing here, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds interesting, though. It sounds pretty cool.
That would make sense. I don't know if that's the way it really is. I did stop the game at one point, and it gives you a tally of monkeys killed, which I apparently had 3, and I didn't realize.
Oh, poor monkeys.
Yeah. Well, remember how I said I thought it was really funny that it scared the monkeys? Yeah, well, it's not so funny when you realize they're dying. And it's also not funny because the monkeys tend to run Prometheus style right in front of the ball. So it's really hard to not run over them at some point, because there was one part where there were like 3 or 4 of them all running in front of it.
Get out of the way!
Yeah, basically. But you don't have a get out of the way button or shout or anything. So, yeah. And it also said monsters killed, which I was like, monsters? Like, I haven't seen a monster yet. And this is probably about 40 minutes in, I think.
Did it have a 0 score there? Or had you
it did have a 0.
Oh, okay. I was like, if you killed 1, you're like, what? I didn't even see it. Yeah.
But it was about this point that I had this puzzle where I had to basically just move 4 cubes into these 4 obvious cube-shaped spaces. It's not an overly taxing puzzle. But what is taxing are the controls, because you don't have a move button or a carry button. You just have to hit it with a hammer until it gets into the right space.
Bang a rock off of it.
Basically. And there's a problem where you have to get it through essentially a doorway, and I would hit it, it would go too far, and you can't get over it. So you have to go back around through a kind of tunnel to the other side. So they knew this was a problem, and this was their solution, to make sure that you could always get around to the other side to deal with the cube, instead of making an easier way to move the cube. All they had to do is...
like a pickup button.
All they had to do is make it like a portal gun and pick it up and move. But no, they stuck with this. You only have a hammer. I mean, they even had this kind of magnetic attracting gun that they could have used to pick up and move things around, much like you described before, the gravity gun. But I think the problem comes in the fact that that button is designated for attracting the ball only, and they didn't work around that.
It would get messy, probably, yeah.
I guess.
Unless you assign another button to it, which would make complete sense.
Yes, that's what I would have done. But there we are. And I finally get the cubes in, albeit at weird angles because I can't put them in nicely. But luckily the game just kind of accepts it. As soon as it's in, it doesn't matter how it looks. It doesn't have to be in there perfectly. Thank goodness, because there's no way I would have
just
made
like a row of old tombstones.
There's a real problem in this game of spikes. So you have to get across spikes. I hope that this is not an issue in the later game, but in the early game, there was a point where I could either try to place the ball in a way where I could jump on it and then jump across, or I could walk on these boards along the side and then jump across. Jumping on the ball is not easy, and getting it to be in exactly the spot that you want it to be, given that you can only kind of pull it or shove it away and you can't hit a stop button. There's no brake button. That's difficult. That's really difficult. So running across the boards and jumping was so much easier, but I spent good 10, maybe 15 minutes of my playthrough trying to do something that I thought I had to do, getting across spikes, jumping and jumping and jumping, and I kept practicing and trying and couldn't figure it out. I think that was just a secret though. And it looked like where I needed to go, but when I tried a different direction, I found that there was just a lava pit, and I just had to put this ball into the lava pit, get to hit button, easy, done. So I didn't need to try to do the other thing, but how would I ever do the other thing? I don't know.
So one of my pet peeves in games is where they put things in that you cannot get to until you either complete the game and then you receive the power-ups at the end, and you can bring them back to the start of the game, and then you can get into that room. That really bugs me, man. I hate that.
I don't think that's what's going on here, though. I think it's just really, really difficult, given the mechanics, to jump. Because basically I'd have to jump on the ball and then jump from the ball onto this other platform, or somehow jump on the ball and get it to move.
Does it not move when you walk on it? Does it not roll like you're a circus elephant?
I don't know, because I had too much difficulty actually landing on it and staying on it for long. There was one point where I jumped, and I think using the kind of attractor button, I think I was able to stay a bit longer. So I thought there might be an easy way to jump on it and do the attractor thing. But no, after another 5 minutes, I just, like I said, I gave up. I think 10, maybe 15 minutes, I was trying this because I thought it was the way to go. It basically looked like it was supposed to be the way to go. So I'm not exactly sure what was going on there, but to me, that's a bit of bad level design, unless they were really trying to make it obvious that there was a secret over there.
Right.
So what it did, basically, the first thing was send the ball across the spikes, and it lowered the spikes down. So I don't know if that did something for this other part, because there's another way where you can walk around and get to the lava pit. So I don't know if maybe lowering the spike somehow let me into that room and I wouldn't have been otherwise. I don't know, but it just felt like the game was trying to send me across those spikes and I couldn't do it. Luckily, I didn't spend the rest of the time doing that, and I made it through. The rest of that level was really easy. I got to the next level, which was called Aztec 1. Cutscene warning of a curse. I'm trying to avoid monkeys now, but can't. This is where there were like 4 of them. Now I have to start swimming. There's a lot of water in this level. So, of course, the ball can move underwater, but it can't float. So it sinks right to the bottom. I have to swim in a path to open a path for the ball. Like I have to hit a button that's going to open a path for the ball. So this is where I was really starting to feel like, oh, this is going to be how the rest of the game is probably going to go. It's a lot of me just having to make sure that the ball can get through to wherever I want to be. I did use the ball at one point to shield myself from a ridiculous amount of darts flying out of the wall. It was kind of a never-ending stream of darts, which, considering that this has been going on for probably centuries, I don't know how it keeps manufacturing these darts.
Maybe they go in a hole on the other side of the wall and get recycled through again.
Yeah, I didn't notice that happening. That would at least give me something. No, they just smack against the wall.
The monkeys are making them.
I doubt that. If that's the case, then I'd feel less bad about running them over.
Yeah.
There is a really cool kind of puzzle, though it's a bit awkward the way that it works, where there's a fuse, but it's hard to tell it's a fuse. I didn't know what was going on, so I used the help button. So basically there's a bomb, and it's huge. It's as big as the ball that I'm moving around. And there's a fuse, and the ball has to go into a pit of oil, and then you have to run it across this torch, which this torch has been lit for, again, probably a century, lying on the floor.
It's the Olympic flame.
But the thing I didn't understand was you actually have to get the ball around the torch, touch the fuse, and then go back to the torch. Because if you run across the torch first, it instantly burns up all the oil on the ball, and it brings the fire back to the pit, which magically goes out, because otherwise the game wouldn't work. I feel like it should have worked where I could have taken this giant metal ball, which can't melt, run it through the fire and set it on fire, and then run it up to the fuse. But that didn't work, and I kept hurting myself because the flames would get back to me. So that's why I had to use the help button. I had no idea what was going on there. At one point, I have to hit cubes to weigh down a door, and that's where I see what looks like a train. And I eventually find it later. There is kind of a train or minecart or something that went through and crashed into a wall.
Like the number 9 from Grim Fandango kind of train?
Number 9.
The number 9, the train that takes them to the underworld.
No, it's more like...
It's like Indiana Jones minecart.
It's much more like
okay.
that, I think, yeah. But this is where I finally get to see monsters. So, there are these humanoid monster things. They walk out, and there are a lot of them very, very quickly. You basically just have to run over them with the ball like you would the monkeys. And you kill these guys, and then I got to a section where the guys were actually shooting something at me. I was using the ball to protect me, and then I realized that they were on a bridge, and there was an obvious mark where I could smash it through. Like, you can use the ball to smash through weak sections of wall, and there was a weak section on the bridge, so I knocked them down, but it knocked them down, but then they fell on an angle, and they were still shooting at me, which I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And then luckily, a heavy weight came sliding down and killed them.
Oh.
But that heavy weight is stairs I need to use to get up onto the ramp where they were. And that's basically it. That's where my 1 hour finished.
All right. So, sounds like fun. Sounds like good times. For $2, can't go wrong.
Yeah, I think that's probably at this point, that's probably the price I would say people should go for, because I know it can get that low.
Right.
I think this was only an hour. I know there's at least 4 or 5 levels. It will probably take 4 or 5. So I wouldn't say $5 is out of the realm of possibility or hitting our mark. I think it holds up fairly well for being 2010. It's fairly unique in the idea of using this giant ball. It's simple, but it works. I do get very frustrated with some of the things. I hate instant death. So things like spikes, lava, that irritates me. Having to use the ball to kill creatures is a little bit awkward, and that's the only thing that you have. And I don't know, I think that it might get monotonous by the end, but I haven't played it all the way through. Based on the 1 hour though, yeah, I would say it's worth giving a try.
Yeah. What would you tag this as then? Like, what would you kind of say it would be?
I'd probably go with like puzzle, platform. Yeah, the third one is the one I don't really know. Those first two are pretty obvious. Again, there's not overly difficult puzzles, and the platforming isn't that great.
It's first person, yeah?
Yeah, so that might be a good third one. There's no real funny tags for this one. I mean, unless you want something like Monkey Killer. But it's a decent game for what it is. It feels the same as other things, but slightly unique in a way that makes me say, yeah, I'd probably recommend this to people who don't mind things that are a bit more basic. Puzzle stuff isn't, people who like easier puzzles or just any puzzles. This is probably worth it. And really, it can be a cheap game. So yeah, I would recommend it. And I will probably finish it.
You go back and play it?
At least a bit longer. If I hit a point where I get too frustrated, I may stop. But I want to hit at least another hour to see what I think.
So would you recommend it to me then? Should I go back and give it another shot? Because like I said, I've completely
I think it's
forgotten.
On your wish list, isn't it?
I put it on my wish list when it came on, but you definitely recommend it to me then?
I'd recommend it to you, definitely. Though I would probably say for you to get it on the cheap.
Fair enough. Sounds good.
Buyer's confirmation.
Today we're going to talk about a wonderful game that I picked for Darren called
IGT Slots.
It looked like a slot machine, and the idea of making you play that for an hour seemed pretty good.
And I was like, oh yeah, I like slot machines in real life. And I like playing the slot machines in Fallout New Vegas. So this will be fun. I used to sit down with a beer and just play the slot machines in New Vegas for hours. And then until...
I can't believe you did. Why?
Because it was...
Were you winning?
Yeah. You win. Because in New Vegas, you can make the casinos go bust. And then all of these flashing things, like you can bet 1 line, 3 lines, 5 lines. There's ones where you can bet 50 lines. It's like, I don't even think there's that many combinations.
All this and more in the next episode of Buyer's Remorse.
Here at the end of the episode, we'd like to talk about our Beggar's Remorse section, where we've gotten a lucky volunteer who's decided to play a game for us. And what game did we have today?
All right, this one is called Escape from Pyramid.
From Pyramid, not like a pyramid?
No, just Escape from Pyramid.
That already sounds like a winner. Who did we have play for us today?
This was done by Noxie, so thank you, Noxie, for taking the plunge on this one. But actually, this is a surprising one. Here's the review. Escape from Pyramid is a fun little game.
What?
Yep. Escape from Pyramid is a fun little game that would be worthwhile for like 40 or 50 cents if it had cards. A man after my own heart. It's like those old Flash games that were just super unfair to you and you had to do trial and error. My main issue with these trial and errors is that there are invisible walls that will launch you into certain death, and those walls are super dodgy and kind of unfair. It's also kind of dumb that when you load into a level, you have to go switch a lever, which then loads the level, which in later levels can take up to 4 or 5 seconds for no reason. This gets sped up after 5 to 6 tries, but it's still noteworthy in my opinion. Alright, so he's basically saying the game preloads, you go in, you flick a switch, then that actually does the loading of the level, sounds like. It's a bit odd, yeah. The hitboxes for blocks are kind of broken, in that you can stand completely off it and still somehow be on it. This makes it possible to cheese a couple of early levels. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the music. The music is just awful, and not enough with that it for some reason decides to slowly add more tracks overlapping, so that at some point you're hearing 4 to 5 tracks at the same time. Just this layer and layer and layer of music. Yeah, so overall, not the worst game out there, and I don't know why it's not on the store anymore, but like I stated earlier, if you could, get it for 50 cents.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I forgot to say, yeah, this is one of those like delisted games. So,
well, compared to some of these others that we're unfortunately subjecting people to, that sounds pretty tame. Though that 4 or 5 tracks over itself, that alone would kill me.
I want to play it just to hear that mess. But he texted me afterwards, he did message me, he's like, I have really low standards.
That's fine.
All right.
Thank you for playing.
Thanks, Noxie.